whatever happened to predictability? The milkman, the paper boy, evening TV. You miss your old familiar friends, but waiting just around the bend. Everywhere you look, everywhere there's a heart, a hand to hold on to. Everywhere you look, everywhere there's a lust of somebody who needs you. When you're lost out there and you're all alone, life is waiting to carry you home. Everywhere you look, everywhere you
Hey Trinity students, Christina Albrecht here, and this week in our series, Oh the Places You Go, we learn from our very own Andrew Tweddle. He shares with us a little bit about his faith journey and how he learned that he is the kind of person that loves answers. And I know a lot of us can relate to that. But he shares with us kind of how he began to be okay with not having all the answers of his faith, and how questions he did want to know the answer to, how he was able to get those by continuing to further his relationship with God. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to text your small group leader. And as always, if you don't have our contact info, you can just drop a comment below and we'll reach out to you. Have a great week, guys.
I think a lot of times when people talk about their faith journey, they have this big event. I know people who can pinpoint the moment, the place where they were. They remember the day when they started to believe in God. For me, it is not like that. Like Alan was saying last week, he grew up at Trinity. I've been going to Trinity since I was 10. So it's been 27 years now. So church has always just been a part of my life. So it's not like there was just this one moment where I was just all of a sudden realized that God is real, God is in my life, and all these things. It was just these series of events. And there was, I can't remember the philosopher's name, but there was this philosopher who talked about how his faith wasn't this one moment, if it was this ocean of events that lifted him up. So it is not just that single thing. It is every drop of water in the ocean has lifted him. And that is what his faith is. It's this culmination of everything and not just a single event. So I think it is kind of like that. And that it's just what I've grown up in. So going to Trinity since I was 10, I, like you guys, was part of the youth group at Trinity. I did the retreats, I did confirmation, I went on mission trips. I did all of these things. But I think I approached faith kind of just I had to have the answers to the questions that were being asked, as opposed to kind of a personal relationship with God. So I always knew the right answer to questions, because there are questions, there's answers I kind of can know what answers people want to hear. And I think a lot of the times I just gave those answers as opposed to really thinking about what my faith was. My faith was able to sustain that kind of almost a shallowness of that throughout high school, because I was still surrounded by a lot of people who had faith. I was at church every Sunday. I was at youth group every Sunday night. I looked forward to all of the youth events. But then I went into college. All of that structure and all of that support was gone. It's when I was in college, I never found a church home in Boston. I went to Boston College. I tried. Boston College is a Jesuit school, which is a Catholic, part of the Catholic faith, and I tried going to services there, but I felt disconnected from them, because I don't know if anybody has been to a Catholic mass. I don't know when I'm supposed to stand up and what I'm supposed to say and when I'm supposed to there's a lot of ritual in the Catholic Church, and I didn't know it which made me feel like an outsider, which only made me feel farther away from God instead of closer to God. So I stopped going because that wasn't helping. When I was home, I would go to Trinity because that's what I did. But for a long time, it was just kind of, I continued to do these things because it's what I did, and I just kept going. I kept going because it's always what I'd done. And for those of you who know me, I like a routine. There are certain ways I like to do things, and I know that's shocking, especially to the field boys who know me. But it is, I like certain ways to do things, so it's just what I did. So I just continue to do it because on Sunday mornings I went to church. So what else would I do on Sunday mornings? And it did. I think it was. I felt I'd go. It felt good to be there. I saw people, but at the same time, I never really, the connection that I was looking for wasn't there. And I think part of that is, maybe not even a part of it, probably a lot of it was that I was not in the right mindset. I was not really looking for God to do anything. I had always identified myself as Christian if anybody asked, but there was nothing really to support that in the way that I lived, like the way that I acted, or like really what there was no evidence of praying, of reading the Bible, of really being in a faith community. But I just was like, oh, I grew up in the church. I'm a Christian. I've always been a Christian, so that's just what I am. And I think it took a while until I realized that like there was more to it than just going to church, saying the right things, and doing all that. And so I think so part of my faith journey was really just accepting the fact that part of being a Christian is really like putting yourself out there and trying to establish that relationship with God. And one of the things I struggled with is like reading the Bible. We can find lots of instances of God loving the world. And there's lots of talk about God loving us, which is comforting. But what is it then? Like if God loves everyone, that means he loves me. But how do I know, like, why does he love me? What is the personal, I need to know something more about that, like, personal relationship that God has with me. So I think that would be easier to have a relationship with him. Like, if you're friends with, like, there's always that person at school that's nice to everybody. And, like, you know them, but, like, sometimes you don't feel connected to that person because it's like, oh, they're like that to everybody. Like, there's nothing special about me because they're just like that to everybody. So God is like that person that loves everybody, is nice to everybody, but he is like really is personally invested in you. And I was trying to find passages that kind of spoke to that a little bit. And I found in the book of Psalms, Psalm 139, if you guys, and I was just, there's part of that just kind of does talk about not even necessarily that how God loves you, but that how God knows you. And I think that's important with we consider all of the existence, everything that's in existence, God individually cares and God individually knows you. And he talks about, I was actually looking at the Message version because I thought it was a little bit easier to look at. So it says, like, God, investigate my life, get all the facts firsthand. This is starting in verse 1. I'm an open book to you. Even from a distance, you know what I'm thinking. You know when I leave and when I get back, I'm never out of your sight. You know everything I'm going to say before I start the first sentence. I look behind me and you're there. Then up ahead and you're there too. Your reassuring presence coming and going. This is too much, too wonderful. I can't take it all in. And I think that is a nice, like this image that God is just always with us. And that is something that I think I've struggled. I've kind of struggled to take personally that God is with us, because there is that whole idea that like if God is always with us, look around the world. Um, like if God is with us, what is going on? And I think part of that is that God is with us, but God isn't like this puppet master, just like controlling everything. I think that is, and for me, I think that was an important distinction to make. I was talking to Carrie, my wife, about this the other day because we were working through a Bible study, and she was saying it like you almost like that. It's almost like God. Like what I was saying was like God is like a clockmaker, where God puts everything in place and He gets everything going and sets it in motion, and then things move and things run. Um, but I think that like God's presence is with us, and I do think I have felt God's presence at times. Um, there are like God's comfort can be with us, and I think I was talking to Carrie about that, where like last year, for those of you who don't know, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. She is free of cancer now, so I'll get to the end there, so you don't sit and wonder how this is all going to go. Um, but like I didn't find myself praying for God to heal Carrie, because that's not like in my mind that's not how God works. Um, Carrie had doctors, she had the science that they have all of everything that they have done and put in place. And maybe I'm being a heretic when I say all these things. This will probably be reviewed by the church, and I'll be asked to stop working with the youth, and excommunicated. But like in my mind, like I prayed for like the strength to get through things and the comfort of knowing that God will see you through. But the healing and like everything that the doctors were doing is what was going to get her better. And they were there, and God is with them while everything is going on. And it was more of God's presence to give us the strength that we had to have to get through things. Not so much of Him like reaching in and like grabbing the cancer and taking it out. Like that's not, in my mind, that's not how God works. And so I think that's, for me, like that is kind of how I imagine God is. Like He is, when things are bad, God is there. He is there to listen to you. He's there to pick you up. He's there to give you strength to get through things. When things are good, He is still with you, and He is working with you. He's working with you to work through things, and it is, as God is just always with you. And I find that to be comforting to know that like no matter what is going on with my life, there is somebody that's always there. On like what it said in the Psalms, like He is before you, He is behind you, He is all around us. And I find that to be very comforting. And I think that's kind of how my faith looks at this point. It changes a lot, and I think that's okay. I think we have to allow our faith to change over time. If we sat here and I was like, hey, I'm 37 years old, this is my faith, it's never going to change, I would be doing myself a disservice for however much longer I have on earth to get to know God better, to get to know God differently. And I think it's important to do that. So that's kind of where I am today. And when I sometimes I do struggle sometimes with my faith, because I am kind of like a science math guy, kind of like what Alan was saying last week. He's got all that. I don't know, like Alan. I was a math teacher for a period of time, and now I'm an actuarial. Now I'm in the actuarial sciences, so I did what Alan did, but in the other order. But I think part of me is like I do have problems sometimes believing things without being able to see them. And like, so if you don't have that evidence of things, if there's nothing strong to support it, like sometimes, and that's one of the things about like faith that is tricky. And it is different than like how I treat a lot of other things. And I think it is because I have felt God's presence. Like there are these moments in my life where I have struggled, and I have truly felt like that God, the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call that, is there to comfort me. And I think we have, like, because I had that background in church. When those things happen, I see that as the presence of God. Without that background of the church, maybe I don't see that. So my faith journey looks different or non-existent. But I think I had that background, which at the time I did it, I went through all the answers, but I still had those things going on, and that was helpful. So I think that's a big part. That's a lot of what my journey looks like. I was trying to think about, like, looking at, like, what's been going on. Like, honestly, like, with with the quarantine, my family has been very lucky. Carrie and I are healthy. We are able to work from home. My kids are healthy. Errol's in kindergarten. He missed 3 months. He missed a couple months of kindergarten while he misses his friends. It's not like, I mean, it wasn't like Daniel missing his last quarter of his senior year, which would be hard. Like, Errol will go back to school. I was going to say the fall, but who knows? He'll go back to school at some point. I'm assuming schools will reopen eventually. So we have been really lucky that we've been able to continue to work. That I've been able to work from home, and Carrie's been able to do some work from home. And now that, like, my office is opening back up, and I'm still able to work from home someday, so Carrie can still meet with clients, and I can make sure the kids aren't watching too much Netflix while that's happening. So we have been really lucky. And honestly, like, I feel like in the last, like, week and a half, the quarantine is not really at the forefront of the things that have been worrying me. But I think there is, I don't really have I don't have a good answer to how we deal with what's going on right now. We support the people who need support. God calls us to love people and to do what it is to fight for them. I'm not trying to get a rally call, but I think it's important for us to recognize that there are injustices in the world, and try to figure out what our role is. And I think that's a hard thing to do, because that's like, we've been doing this Bible study on hope, and it talks a lot about, like, hope. Like, this one of the words for the biblical hope is kind of like this tension that you have while you wait for something to happen. So, and then we try to hope for good things to come, and it's just all, so, like, I definitely feel that tension, but it's hard sometimes. It is really hard to think that good things are still going to come, because sometimes it's just hard to imagine that things are going to turn out right, but we have to have that faith that it is. And it was, I hear people say things and I immediately forget who it was who said it, but kind of remember what they said. And one of them was, like, optimism versus hope. Like, optimism is taking all the pieces that exist and seeing how they can fit together for a good outcome. And hope is not knowing how these pieces work together and still believing that that good outcome will be there. And I think right now I feel like more that there is hope than optimism, because it's hard right now. But I think we can be here together, and I think God's presence sees us through things and can be with us through challenges and difficult things. And that's what we have to have faith in that. That's all I got.
Love it. I'm really happy that, because I feel like for people, and look at all the little, like, applause guys you got. That's exciting.
Thanks, guys. I don't believe you, Bailey.
Called out. I feel like one thing that a lot of people in this, well, probably most of your story, a lot of people in this group can relate to. A lot of you are younger, and showing up here is probably something you do because it's stuff your family does. I know all of your families are pretty involved at Trinity, and so for you, it probably doesn't feel like there's just that one moment, and that's how it was for me too. not to get into like my thing, but my grandma take me to church with her, and so it was just kind of like a normal thing. And so I'd hear like all my friends talk about that one moment, and I felt like maybe I wasn't a real Christian because I didn't have that one moment. I was like, well, I think I believe, but I don't have that exact time, so maybe I'm not. And so I think it's nice for us to have a reminder that it doesn't always work like that, where it just all of a sudden clicks. It can be a gradual thing where you just continue to learn more and more. So I'm really happy you talked about that. And then the hope part, obviously what you said is just huge right now. It can be really difficult to have hope. And some of us were on a Zoom call on Thursday, and we kind of talked about what we can do. And I think part of what it is God's called us, all of us, to do is to just provide hope to people. That's something forward to give them something to believe in. And that looks different to different people at different times. But I think out of all things, that can be maybe one of the hardest to do, is to have hope and to find the positive. That's why every week, I know that there's like not a lot going on right now, but that's why every week I'm like, what's the one exciting thing you did this week? Even though it was probably nothing. But to just find like, all right, well, out of watching Netflix and sitting with my family, I guess hanging out with my family was more exciting, just so you guys can get into the mindset of thinking, of trying to have something to focus on that's positive. In times like right now with lots of things going on, that's just really important. So
God, I thank you for today. I thank you for the opportunity that we have, even though we can't be physically together, to be together virtually. And I pray that as we continue onward, whether we end up meeting on Father's Day weekend or whether we end up meeting on some other time, that you would guide us and you would help us to know what's best and what's safe, especially during this time of quarantine and reopening especially. And I pray for the rest of all the things that are going on in the world, that you would let us put love first, put what you want, that we would be together and fight for each other. And most importantly, that we would remember what you taught and embody that in the ways that we live our lives. And I pray for Ashley's friend's niece, and all of that they would all be safe and that you would comfort them and be with them, especially during this time of illness and all of that. And I pray for everyone in this youth group, and I pray for all the unspoken prayer requests, if there are any, or any other things that need to be the subject of prayer right now. And again, I thank you for today and all these opportunities that you give us. Pray you would help us have a great week. Amen.